Last week, I was browsing Bulbapedia to look up something for a question that was asked on a Discord server that I'm in. During my quick digging, I was on the page for the fairy type and came across a part of the page that I never even thought about. The statistical averages, aka the average stats for all of the fairy type Pokemon. That got me thinking, what are the average BSTs for all 18 types? Which led me down a massive rabbit hole. And today, I finally got all of the answers that you probably didn't even care about. But here we go anyway. These are the average BSTs for all 18 Pokemon types from lowest to highest. Just a few things to note before we get started with the list. First, Bulbapedia has two charts for the stat averages, overall and fully evolved. The rankings for this video will be based on the overall stats, as the fully evolved ones would make the list a little one-sided, as those obviously aren't counting for every single Pokemon of each type. But if this video gets to 20 likes, I'll follow this video up with ranking the fully evolved average BSTs for every type. Secondly, to make things a little more interesting, which would also apply to the aforementioned video I just teased to make, I'll be going over each individual stat to see where they rank against one another, as that would also help further explain why each type ranked where they did. Lastly, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as that helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. So, without further delay, let's finally get right into it. In dead last at 18th place with 353.17 is the Bug type. Bug is often considered to be one of, if not the worst type in most Pokemon games, as most Bug type Pokemon, even the fully evolved ones, are just disappointingly weak. One look at the stats can easily back this up, as it's dead last in all but defense, where it's second to last in 17th. To further add to injury, is the only type whose average overall BST is less than 400. It's also the only type to have at least one stat be less than 60. We have seen actually good Bug-type Pokemon come out more frequently in some of the more recent games like Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, and there are outliers in older games that are actually good, like Heracross and Leavanny. But sadly, those are just the minority in what is otherwise a really disappointing type that is outclassed pretty much everywhere. In 17th place with 416.71 is Normal, the most basic type of them all and one of the safest types to go with. It's not the most impressive type on paper, and the stats back it up. The worst performer for Normal is Defense, where it is dead last, and second to last in both special stats. Attack is slightly better at 13th, with Speed and HP cracking the top 10, with Speed coming in 7th and HP scraping into the top 5 in 5th. Normal definitely has its polar opposites, full of lots of crappy Pokemon like Rattata and Patrat, but the heavy hitters like Slacking and Kangaskhan carry this type nicely. Even so though, it's only enough to keep it out of dead last. At number 16 with 431.31 is the Poison type. Poison is such a weird type. It's fantastic for coverage on non-Poison type Pokemon, and Poison is such a useful status too. But when talking about the Poison type Pokemon themselves, it starts to look more disappointing on paper. Unlike Normal, which had a couple of high ranking stats to save it from being dead last, Poison doesn't have that one standout stat. Instead, it's more consistent across the board. 12th in both HP and special attack, 15th in attack, 14th in defense, 11th in special defense, and speed surprisingly is its best ranking stat, coming in at 10th. Nothing inherently awful per se, but much like Normal and Bug, Poison is also home to many weaker Pokemon that do ultimately hold it back, such as Weedle, Zubat, and Gulpin. Coming at number 15 with 432.44 is the Grass type. Unlike the Poison type, where I was low-key surprised to see it rank as low as it did, Grass being this low, unfortunately, doesn't surprise me, as it's never been known for being a strong type. It surprisingly performed best in the defense department, as both defense and special defense both come in 9th place, which is somewhat impressive given how little resistances Grass has compared to other types that ranked higher. I was also surprised to see attack performing better than special attack, though neither of them made it into the top 10, with attack landing at 11th and special attack in 13th. Speed and HP do hurt the most though, with HP coming in 15th, while speed is 14th. To be honest, I thought the offense stats were going to rank better than they actually did, but it's clear that my assumptions were wrong in this case. Even with some respectable grass-type Pokemon like all of the grass starters, 15th is only the best that this type can do, unfortunately. Splashing into the 14th spot with 440.84 is the Water type. This is my personal favorite type, and it's another type that I would consider to be a safe one. Most Water-type Pokemon tend to be simply solid across the board with no real obvious drawbacks, and one look at the stats can back that up, where it's all pretty decent across the board. 9th in HP, 12th in attack and special defense, 11th in speed, with defense and special attack performing the best in 8th. Special attack being as high as it is doesn't surprise me at all, as a good portion of Water types tend to have that as their best offense stat anyway, and this just backs that up. Ahead of that, at number 13 with 452.1 is the Ground type. It's a bit surprising to see this one rank as low as it does, as half of its stats are incredibly solid. 4th in HP, 5th in attack, and 4th in defense. That alone would have launched it into the top 10 at least. But its special stats and speed drag it down hard, with special attack and special defense both coming in 3rd to last, and speed being 2nd to last. Ground types are not known for being super fast, so this stat being as low as it is isn't too surprising to see. The same can't quite be said for special defense and even special attack, however. I get that most of the best ground type Pokemon are physically attacking, and ground types tend to be more on the tanky side anyway. But even so, I'm still surprised to see ground held back this far by those 3 stats, because otherwise it would have ranked so much higher. Zapping its way into 12th place with 452.9 is Electric. Another one of my personal favorite types, and this one really is a tale of 2 stats doing most of the heavy lifting. So let's just get the bad ones out of the way first. 2nd to last in HP, 3rd to last in attack, 15th in defense, and 14th in special defense. But then we have special attack all the way in 4th, and speed doing even better, landing in 3rd. This isn't surprising one bit though, as electric types tend to do amazingly well in these departments. And the numbers that we're seeing here definitely backs that up nicely. But I can't help but notice how lopsided this is. Like, 2 of electric stats are amazing, while the rest are just bad. Which ultimately explains why it didn't make it into the top 10. Soaring ahead to number 11 with 454.24 is the Flying type. One of the more common types, especially in the early parts of any Pokemon game. And fortunately, it's one of the best types to have that early, and it still does decently well the further you progress into the game. To start, defense is quite disappointing as that is 3rd to last, and special defense is not that much better either at 15th. But 10th in attack and 7th in both HP and special attack are pretty respectable. But then its speed just goes bonkers, enough to land in 2nd place. This makes sense though, as most flying types are pretty fast to begin with. But still, 2nd in speed is mighty impressive, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Kicking off the top 10 is the Fairy type with 456.19. It's hard to believe that even 10 whole years after its debut, this is still the latest type to be added to Pokemon if you don't count the Stellar Terra type. And when it came out with X and Y, it brought quite the shakeup, providing a powerful counter to the Dragon type especially. As for the stats themselves, Fairy does decently well for the most part, with one key surprise. 14th in HP, 2nd to last in attack, 10th in defense, 13th in speed. Special attack does really well at 5th place, and it pulls completely ahead to 1st place for special defense. This makes sense though, as some of the best Fairy types of all time happen to be great special walls like Primarina and Fluttermane. And the stats that we see clearly solidify that. So even if the type might seem cute and unassuming on the surface, deep down, it's really good. Getting spooky for number 9 with 457.06, which is the Ghost type. A type that low-key sucked in its debut generation, even though the Pokemon that were assigned to this type were actually really good. The only area where this type truly falls short in terms of stats is in HP, where it's 3rd to last. Speed is also relatively low at 12th place, but the rest of its stats are all really solid. 9th in attack, 7th in defense, 6th in special attack, and 5th in special defense. It's a solid type overall now, so seeing Ghost land pretty much right in the middle of the overall rank is not too surprising. Ahead at number 8 with 457.48 is the Rock type. This type excels in two departments: physical, 6th in attack, and a whopping 2nd in defense. This shouldn't surprise anyone, as the Rock type has been known for being a tanky type that has great physical offense since pretty much the very beginning. And it's these two stats that do all of the carrying, as the rest of them are rather far behind. 10th in special defense, 13th in HP, 15th in special attack, and 3rd to last in speed. The speed being this low is completely expected too, as most Rock types are also known for being quite slow. It's really fascinating that Rock's stats are this two-sided, much like Electric, as the rest of the stats are rather mediocre at best. But its physical stats being as high as they are, it's all that Rock really needs to land itself in the top 10. Teleporting into 7th place with 464.85 is the Psychic type. I honestly thought for sure that this would rank higher, especially given how the Psychic type is synonymous with being incredibly powerful, especially when you look at Pokemon like Alakazam, Gardevoir, and Gallade. But as it turns out, the Psychic type is kind of almost a one-trick pony. Yes, its special attack is incredible, sitting all the way in 2nd. Special defense is not too far behind in 4th, and speed is also respectable in 8th. But its physical stats and HP really let it down the most, and ultimately hold it back from climbing any further. Attack is all the way down to 14th, defense is 12th, and HP is 11th. Granted, Psychic was never good in the physical department in the first place, but it really isn't meant to either. Psychic really is the special type, even if it's beaten by the fairy type in the special defense area. Burning its way into 6th place with 470.02 is the Fire type. Another type that has been consistently good since pretty much the beginning. Some of the best Pokemon in the entire game happen to be Fire type, with one real big weak stat in defense where it's 13th. But everything else is solid to just straight up great. 8th in HP, attack, and special defense, 6th in speed, and special attack round to the top 3 at 3rd place. This strong performance by the rest of its stats is to be completely expected, as Fire is one of the most reliable types one can have on their team. The fact that one could have a Pokemon whose type is as powerful as this as their starter is just insane, and it only gets better the further you progress. I knew Fire would perform well, and it certainly did it with it ranking this high. Chilling out at the 5th spot with 471.52 is the Ice type. This was by far the most surprising result for me. On the surface, Ice sounds like a rather disappointing type, and it definitely is a rather situational type to use. Despite how many weaknesses that this type has, it's no slouch in its bulk. 2nd in HP, 6th in both defense stats, with attack also doing well in 7th. Speed is no slouch either in 9th, though surprisingly it lags in special attack as that lands in 11th. This is another type that I always think is more of a specially offensive type, as some of my favorite Pokemon from this type lead in that direction anyway. But it's another instance where my assumptions are just simply wrong. Turning off the lights with 471.64 at number 4 is the Dark type. Back when this type first debuted in Gen 2, it served as another much needed counter for the overpowered Psychic type. And 25 years later, it's still pulling strong from top to bottom, with attack being its strongest showing, landing in 4th place. Speed follows up in 5th place, then HP in 6th place after that. Special attack is middle of the road though in 9th place, but both defense stats are kinda mediocre, with defense landing in 11th and special defense coming in 13th. Not gonna lie, I didn't expect Dark to rank this high, but then again, there are some really high profile Pokemon in here like Honchkrow, Absol, Greninja, and Darkrai, just to name a few examples. It's surprisingly a good enough type to land it into the top 5. Top 3 time. With 497.06, we have the Fighting type claiming the bronze. One of the most dependable types in the entire game. At least when talking about physical offense. Let's just get the bat out of the way right off the bat. Special attack is awful, coming all the way in 14th. But everything else is solid to just straight up incredible. 7th in special defense, 5th in defense, 4th in speed, 3rd in HP. And if you thought attack would be off the charts high, then you'd be right, as that is sitting all the way in 1st place. One of only 3 types to have a stat of at least 100. That's not just incredibly high in general, it's the highest average stat for any type, period. And it's not even close. There is a reason fighting is considered to be one of the best types in the game, and even with how one-sided it might seem with that ridiculous attack stat, it's still very solid if you don't count the special attack. Taking the silver with 500.6 is the steel type. Our first type to have an overall average BST of at least 500, and this one barely makes it over. As the other type that got introduced with gold and silver, steel took a while to have its potential truly unleashed. But apparently, it got so good that it's able to rank this high. And fortunately, it's got the stats to back it up. 10th in HP and special attack, 3rd in attack and special defense, but speed trailing at 15th. The real star of the show is, to no one's surprise, defense, where it's at the top of the pack in 1st place. This gives Steel the 2nd highest singular average stat of any type, barely behind Fighting's incredible 109.84 average attack. Steel has always been known for being one of, if not the most reliable tank types, partially thanks to just how many types it resists. Toss a Steel-type Pokemon onto your team, and you're gonna have a team member that is just gonna last for days upon days. Finally, taking the gold at the top, number 1. With a whopping 553.87, it's the Dragon type. I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone. It's been said in the games that Dragon-type Pokemon are incredibly powerful, and indeed they actually are, as they just dominate in terms of stats. 1st in HP, 1st in special attack, 1st in speed, 2nd in attack, 2nd in special defense, and 3rd in defense. There is no bad stat at all for the Dragon type. Some of the best Pokemon in the entire game, some of the best Pokemon in series history happen to be Dragon type, ranging from small cuties like Dratini and Gumi to the legendary powerhouses like Rayquaza, Zekrom, and Koraidon. All incredible Pokemon that give your team an absolute force to be reckoned with. This is why some of the best and hardest boss fights in all of Pokemon involve some kind of Dragon type. They're that good. I fully expected a clean victory for Dragon, and while it did have some stiff competition, it still ultimately came out on top. With stats this good, and with Pokemon this good, I'd be surprised if Dragon didn't top the list. It's just simply unmatched, and will be quite the task for any other type to overcome it. So, what did we learn today? Even after the introduction of the Fairy type in X and Y, the Dragon type still reigns supreme in terms of average overall stats. Additionally, I personally did not think that the Steel type was going to perform as well as it did. I was also pleasantly surprised to see a strong performance out of the Ice type too, especially given how difficult it can be to raise an Ice type Pokemon. And one last thing is, here is the full spreadsheet for the BSTs that we took a look at today. So if you want to take a look back at anything, feel free to pause the video right now. This was a fascinating topic to research on, but it was low-key a lot of fun doing all this digging, even if all the average stats were already available on Bulbapedia. Honestly, I would love to do more videos like this in the future. So, like I said at the top, if this video gets to 20 likes, I'll follow this video up with ranking the fully evolved average BSTs for all 18 types. If you enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like and also subscribe if you haven't done so yet. With all that said, that is going to do it for me in this video. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. This is District 900, signing off.